What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with the Wave Report number 29. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about this past weekend's fights, and also we're going to give you a little preview of the Day of Reckoning fight card, the monster card that's going to be this Saturday. I will be here all day Saturday. It will probably be my longest live commentary that I've ever done on this channel. All right, so I'll be here. I'm expecting to be here as early as 11 a.m. Eastern time. I plan on covering the entire card. So I believe there's 8 fights on the card, and I will be covering all 8 fights on the card. All right, so be here Saturday. Again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. All right, and you'll get notified when I log on. I'm going to do a few prediction videos. I already did my film study for Joshua and Wallin, so expect that one first. I'm going to do one on Wilder and Parker as well. And then I will also do one on the Gerald Miller fight with Daniel Dubois. All right, so just be on the lookout. I'm going to do some content this weekend. This week leading up. Probably do a weigh-in reaction, a press conference reaction, and all that. So be on the lookout. I have Thursday through Saturday off, so I will be dedicating myself to the channel all weekend. All right, so be on the lookout for that. All right, so let's just briefly go over some of the fights from this past weekend. Let's start out with Dave Morrell Jr. Dave Morrell, I don't know if he's a junior, and I don't know why I said that. Maybe he is a junior, but anyway, let's start out with David Morrell against Sena Abeko. Now, this is supposed to be on, this was on the last Showtime card ever. All right, so Showtime is officially done. I thought it was done with David Benavidez for Demetrius Andrade, but this was the final Showtime card ever. So Showtime is officially over. Showtime boxing, that is, it's officially over. And looking forward to seeing what the PBC is going to bring us in the next year. All right, we know that they strike the deal with Amazon Prime and all that, so we'll wait and see. Hopefully we get more dates though. But anyway, let's talk about this fight. Really wasn't expecting much. I didn't do any breakdowns or anything because I was able to look up Agbeko and realize that he wasn't really going to be a challenge for Dave Morrell. It's more like a stay busy showcase type of fight against a journeyman. And David Morrell destroyed him in 2 rounds. Even in the first round, it looked like he was going to stop him in the first round. And in the second round, he just exploded and stopped Abeko. At this point, and I've been saying this, I think before Dave get to, I would love to see him fight David Benavidez, who I believe is the best fighter at 168 after Canelo. I think it's Canelo and then David, and I think it's everyone else. I think that Dave Morrell, I don't believe that Benavidez is going to fight him. Maybe he does if Benavidez doesn't get Canelo next. I don't think the Canelo fight is going to happen next. I just don't think it's going to happen next for Benavidez, but it will happen. I think Benavidez is probably going to have one more fight before getting Canelo. And I also think that Dave Morrell is probably going to have to fight someone other, like a top super middleweight that is not Benavidez or Canelo. You know what I mean? Because he's already in position to fight for a title. He's the regular WBA title holder right now. Even with 10 professional fights, he's been the title holder for at least 2 fights. So I think from David, what I need him to do is fight like a former champion or someone that is still one of the top 10 guys at 168. And, that includes Demetrius Andrade, Caleb Plant. You got Jaime Munguia is going to be fighting. He's going to be fighting John Ryder. So John Ryder and Jaime is not going to be available. And this is Jaime's, I think it's his first fight at 168, maybe his second. But no, he fought Deverenchenko at 160. So this will be his opening fight at 168. So those 2 are not available right now. But I think it's time for Dave Morrell to, get in a more competitive fight. I can see them getting, like maybe a Durrell, someone from the past. But, even at this point, I think he would destroy Durrell. I know Durrell's a former champion. and it's a good look. But at this point, it's like Darrell hasn't won a significant fight in a long time. You know what I mean? And I think, David Morrell should be fighting the top tier fighters. I wouldn't mind if he fought David Benavidez. I mean, that fight was supposed to happen, but I'm just trying to be realistic here. Benavidez is right there. He's so close to getting a Canelo fight, and I don't think he's going to ruin that for someone that's on a come up, someone that is, on below him on a come up. So even though I would love to see any of these fights, all of these fights are great. It's just that I'm trying to be more realistic. I know Canelo has the options to do whatever he wants, and Canelo may not even fight a super middleweight next. Canelo is totally unpredictable because he has the option to fight whoever he wants. Anyone would fight him. He just fought a junior middleweight in his last fight. So Canelo could do what he wants to do, and he will do what he wants to do. And I'm not expecting Benavidez to be the next guy, but Dave Morrell, I mean, Benavidez says like he is willing to go after any of Canelo's other options. And, I wonder if David Morrell is one of those options that he will go after. I personally believe Benavidez would beat Morrell. All right. I love Morrell. He's a great fighter. Let me say he's a very good fighter. I don't want to say great, but he's a really good fighter. You know what I mean? And I think he's super powerful, explosive. He could box pretty well, but I want to see a little bit more. There's also Edgar Berlanga, who is scheduled to fight someone. I just saw that he does have an opponent, but it's not no one that good. I think Edgar Berlanga is saving himself for a big fight. I don't think he's going to challenge anyone really that good because he's kind of already been exposed, as not like a loser or anything, but it's not being as good as those first 16 knockouts he had. I think once Berlanga was forced to box and go more rounds, he kind of got exposed, and I think he's saving himself. It's kind of like Jaime Munguia, where I think Jaime Munguia is fighting a different level than him, but I still believe that Jaime Munguia is being protected at the same time. He's still being protected, but he's fighting better opponents than what's his name? Edgar Berlanga. All right. So anyway, David Morrell, again, all those fights are good. Plant, Andrade, Charlo, Munguia, Ryder, Berlanga, all of those fights are all good. I think at the lowest level, I think Darrell would be a good fight. But it's one thing I will say is that, especially with being in Showtime, being with the PBC, at least they kept them very active, which is good. You know what I mean? So we just got to wait and see what happens. There's also a Diego Pacheco, too, who's over there with Golden Boy, I believe. I'm not expecting that neither. I think Diego is even like lower as far as opposition than David, but he's not too far off. That's a guy that I think needs more work, more development, But again, these are all good fights, right? I'm not complaining about any of these fights, but I think Morrell needs to step up. But I don't think many fighters are going to be willing to face him right now. That's why I say all the time, man, when it comes to these prospects, man, you got to get them early sometimes. You got to get them early, and the longer you wait, the more difficult they're going to be. I've said this about plenty of guys like Errol and so many other fighters over the years. Sometimes when you wait too long, these guys develop, and then you're going to be forced to face them at a time where you're declining and they're improving, But anyway, we'll see. Wait and see what happens, all right? All right, Next topic. Chris Colbert gets dominated by Jose Valenzuela, Rayo. All right, he gets stopped in the 6th round. Then stopped. He got knocked out cold. One of the craziest knockouts of the year. Craziest ones. I watched the fight, man. I didn't watch all of it live because I was on live talking a little bit about the Bam and Sonny Edwards fight, so I didn't watch the fight live. What I will say, oh, because I had to go to a dinner. I had to go to a birthday dinner the other night. But what I will say, I did watch the fight. I was able to find a link. Luckily, the next morning, I got up early Sunday morning to watch this fight. And I was like, man. I mean, it even looked like Chris Colbert was going to get stopped in the first round, to be honest. I mean, he took a beating. And as I'm watching him, man, and watching his last few fights, I know he has the ability to switch. I know he picked up some decent wins. One thing about Chris Colbert, and I've been following him for a long time, right? He's been fighting for a long time. I know he's still young, but he's been around for a long time. And I've been waiting to see like him step up. And I always wondered why he hadn't really stepped up in opposition. And now in his most recent fights, you see why. He's really not that good. He's really not that good when he's fighting someone at his level or greater. It's like the lack of head movement. It's defensively. It's like I didn't see anything there, and he goes into this, like, he shells up and then he goes into like this mode where you're attacking him and he's just like hoping you would burn out so he can throw some combinations. But his volume is too low. His defense is really not that good. He just doesn't let his hands go enough, man. And once a fighter gets it going with him, it's no coming back for him. There's just no coming back. And when he were fighting some of the lower level opposition, you would notice that his performance were never consistent. Like, he would have one really good performance and then have one so-so performance against journeyman, and it's just like, now that he fought Hector Garcia and then fought Rayo twice, it's just like, all right, where does he go from here? I don't want to blame it on size, because I was thinking like maybe go back down to 130, but Hector beat him up and he had a retreat for the remaining of the fight. So he didn't get knocked out. I mean, he said it himself. In this fight here, yes, he stayed in there and he squared up and he tried to hold his own, but it led to him getting knocked out. And I personally believe Hector probably would have knocked him out if he didn't run for the second half of the fight. So I don't really know what's next for Chris Colbert. This is a big loss. I don't want to see a third fight because I think Jose might have edged the first one. It was very close. I tried to rewatch it this week, but I couldn't find it. But it's a big win for Jose, and avenging one of his losses. I can't really feel bad for Chris because he does so much talking like about everybody. He was even talking about fighters that's not in his weight class. He was talking a lot about Errol. He was talking a lot about Wilder. It's just that he talks so much. He had that whole thing with Shakur Stevenson on live, and it's like, man, he does so much talking. It's hard to really defend him. Like, I like him. I want him to win. He's a New York native. He's from Brooklyn. I know some people that know him. I mean, you want him to win, but at the same time, it's like, damn, when you perform like that, I don't know, man. It's time to, like, the only thing I see happening from here on is him being a tune-up for the up-and-coming guys, or him just going back and beating journeyman until he gets another good, decent match to where he gets stopped again, So it's a tough loss. As far as Rayo, it's a great win for him. He avenged his loss, like I said, but I still got to see more. Like, I don't think that performance makes me believe he would beat Edwin De Los Santos if they were to rematch. I think he still should stay far away from him. I know Santos he didn't look great against Shakur, but that's Shakur. You know what I mean? But I do think Edwin would be very competitive against the top guys at 135. I've been saying this. So I think Ryo should stay away from him. But as far as everyone else that's coming up, get some more fights in, get some more experience. I don't think he should go right to the next big guy. I know he called out Tank. Of course you would take a Tank fight because it's a bag. You get exposure in fighting one of the biggest name in boxing, but competitively, he would get knocked out by Tank. I still don't even think he should be fighting like a Frank Martin yet. I think he needs to get some more fights in, and there's a lot of other ops out there that he can fight. Like someone on a like Adam Lopez type of level or something like that. You know what I mean? I just don't think he should be fighting a top 10 guy right now. That's just my personal opinion. He avenged one of his losses, and it was good. But I still think he needs to develop a little bit more. I think the Santos fight was probably a bad matchup, and I know he was getting a lot of hype behind him being a prospect, but that was just a little too soon, and I think the matchmaking was wrong. But again, they were probably judging off Santos's most recent performances. Stylistically, it was just a bad matchup for him that early in his career. All right, but he could bounce back. Obviously he did, and this is a great win. But it's also Chris Colbert, who we just never really knew with him, and now I feel like we do know now what level he's at. All right, so yeah, so I'm gonna keep it at that. As far as moving on to the next, let's talk about Sonny Edwards, Jesse Bam Rodriguez, the biggest fight of this weekend. Huge flyweight fight, a lot of hype behind it. It was a lot of hype behind it, but it was just bad timing, because again, we're coming off back-to-back weekends with big name fights. You had the Benavidez Andre fight, and then you had Ryan Garcia fight. You had Devin Haney and Prograis fight, which was promoted really, really well. And then you had this fight, and then next week you have the Day of Reckoning. So it's just the timing was not the best. It is a big fight. It is the best between the two best flyweights that were undefeated. It was a unification match, but the timing was off. But a lot of hardcore fans did watch it. And plus it was so much nonsense going on this week with 135. But also with the Clarissa Shields thing. So everybody was talking about all the bullshit. So you know how it is. It is what it is. This fight was very hard to call for me prior to the fight. And I think a lot of us was basing that off the Christian Gonzalez performance. Not so much with the Israel Gonzalez, but the Christian Gonzalez performance. Because I thought Christian was, he went the distance. He was able to land a lot of shots against Bam. His movement gave us problems. The unorthodox, the angles, the switching, it gave Bam some problems. Gonzalez didn't have power like that neither. But, he gave Bam some problems. It wasn't Bam's one of his best showings. He's looked better against the fighters that had the better resumes like Carlos Cuadras and Rungvisai. Those guys were better fighters as far as resumes, but stylistically, Gonzalez did so well against Bam. Still clearly lost, but this fight was hard to call because of those fights. To be honest, if it wasn't for that fight, I probably wouldn't have even thought twice about Bam winning the fight. But I also expected more from Sonny Edwards. I said opening up in the first 2 or 3 rounds that Sonny should be a little stationary and try to outbox Bam. I didn't think it was smart to start moving a lot early in the fight. You know what I mean? Because Bam would adjust to that. And you don't want to come out fighting that way because you're going to burn yourself out by moving and and trying to outbox him that way. So I thought it was smart that Sonny started the fight being stationary and being in the center of the ring and trying to outbox him, because it was debatable who would be the better boxer between the two. Between the two, Sonny had a lot of hand speed. We know that he's very awkward and he can switch and all of that, give you all of these angles. So I figured that would give Bam some trouble, but Bam started out fast, and Sonny was getting hit with a lot of big shots early. And I thought even maybe as early as the second or third round, Sonny should have probably adjusted. I think maybe definitely after the second round, I think it was time to say, okay, you know what? Bam, from what I saw, Bam hand speed was able to match his. Bam's counters was on point. His timing was on point. Bam's feints were very good. Like, Sonny was biting a lot on his feints. And Bam's distance, like, controlling was good. Like, he was just stepping in and out very quick. His feet were very quick. And at that point, Bam was looking like the best version of himself. You know what I mean? Like, whatever issues that we saw in the last couple of fights, we didn't see that here. You know what I mean? He was looking as great and even better than he was in the Carlos Cuadras fight. So at that point, it's time to adjust and change the game plan. And Sonny didn't do it. I don't know if he was just too overconfident in his skills. I don't know if he basically fought Jesse's fight. And it was still competitive, but they fought Jesse fight. And Jesse was the more powerful puncher between the two. He has the better cardio, he has the higher volume. So why fight his fight? Why give it away like that? Why are we going into the third and fourth and into the fifth round before we start seeing a little bit of movement from Jesse? And at that point, from Sonny. And at that point, it's not even movement because he's trying to, give him some different looks or anything. It's more like he's moving because he's being forced to. He's retreating a little bit because he's taking too much punishment. By the end of the third round, I felt like Sonny was already taking too much punishment. And I think he should have changed up the game plan completely. And I'm not saying run, but give yourself give him different looks by using your legs. You have great legs. You move extremely well. He stayed stationary for too long. And I think Sonny would have lost the fight anyway. I picked Sonny to lose, but I thought that it would have been more competitive in losing. I thought that it might have been a debatable loss. I thought that it might have went to the scorecards. But when you give it up like that, it's like, damn, man, you just gonna just try to beat this guy in his own game. When he's coming in, he's looking great. He's fighting the best version of himself. His hand speed is good. Everything is good. It just was, he got dominated. It was competitive, but he still got beat up pretty bad. It's been confirmed that he had a fractured orbital bone when he basically got stopped on the stool. He didn't come out on the stool after the ninth round. It was clear. I thought the fight was going to end a little earlier than that, at least a round earlier. But it didn't. He was taking too much punishment, and I was waiting for the corner to stop it, to be honest. Sonny looked like he wanted to continue, but it was just too much punishment. So dominating performance from Bam Rodriguez. Great performance. His best win, in my opinion, yet. And he has a lot of options. He has a million options. For Sonny, it's more about recovering, getting back into it. Hopefully he can learn from here, but he took a beating. But as far as Bam, he's still young. I saw the post-fight conference, and he has a lot of options. Robert said that he's young. He should probably stay at 112, have a couple more fights. He could unify with Martinez, try to shoot for undisputed. There's still fights out there for him at 112, but we know the big names and the tougher fights are at 115. He's became champion there before. He doesn't have to move up right away, but the fights that people are going to want to see are at 115. Outside of Martinez, the other bigger fights are at 115. And, he doesn't really want to fight Roman Gonzalez because he has a good relationship with him. So I understand that. So this is my stance, and I said this about heavyweight division. Before these new guys come in, I kind of want to see the outgoing guys go out with fighting each other. And there's still fights that we still haven't had at 115, right? So we already know that Nakatani's moved up, and he's got a crazy knockout win against Jason Maloney, right? I think it was Jason Maloney. I know it was two Maloneys, right? He has one of the craziest knockouts this year. I think Nakatani should be last. If I'm Team Bam, as much as I would love to see that fight right now, I would let Nakatani do his thing, maybe fighting one of the legends at 115 if they're not going to fight each other. All right? I'm not expecting to see Bam against Nakatani right now. All right? I think both of those guys are on a collision course. And if they were to fight next, that would be great. But I don't see it being a realistic fight right now. I think they're both dangerous for each other. So, I would like Yoka to fight Estrada or Chocolatito. I would like those fights simply because Yoka hasn't fought neither one of those two. And all three of them are multi-division champions. They all three of them had titles in like at least 3 divisions, right? So being that Yoka hasn't fought Roman Gonzalez or, Estrada, he should fight one of those two. All right, but you also got Nakatani there, and you also got there's bad blood. There's some bad blood with Bam and not only Bam and Estrada, but you got Bam and Yoka because Yoka beat Bam's brother, all right, Franco. So there's so many options. If he doesn't stay at 112, he could go to 115, fight Chocolatito, Yoka, Nakatani, Estrada. All of those fights are available. So he has a ton of options, but he also has a ton of time. So I think he should go with whatever is the best option for him, whoever's available. And I'm cool with any of those fights. Even if he stays at 112 and fights Martinez, I'm cool with any of those fights. I think he destroys Martinez, but, still a good fight. All right? So, Bam is improving with every fight. He will continue to improve. Excuse me. And I think they're going to continue to move him carefully, continue to upgrade, but he's going to take the challenges, but they're not going to be. I think Nakatani is probably the most dangerous fight for him right now. All right, and I don't see it happening. Not a duck or anything. It's just I don't see it happening right now. I think that is the most dangerous fight for him. Most dangerous fight for both of them. All right, so we'll see. All right, so let's do before I get out of here, I just want to preview the Day of Reckoning card, which is coming up this weekend. But let's start out with Jai Opetaia. Jai got stripped, or I'm sorry, he vacated his IBF title. He was forced to vacate it. They were going to strip him. It's because he's going to be fighting Elizaro on this card. Zaro is a voluntary fight. All right, and he would be facing 2 voluntaries in a row. All right, when he faced off against Jordan Thompson a couple months back, that was a voluntary match. The problem is with this. I have. In the IBF, we just were talking about the IBF, and they've always been the most strict sanctioning body. But just like the other ones, they're a little inconsistent. I think some fighters, like we was just talking about Bud Crawford and Errol Spence. Even though I personally wasn't mad at the stripping of Crawford, I still thought that Errol went a good amount of years without having to defend that IBF. But also, Errol fought names and people that we wanted to see him face over those last couple of IBF mandatories or number one ranked guy. So there's this line where sometimes the mandatories suck, right? And sometimes the mandatories are good, or sometimes they are dangerous, but they are unknown. You know what I mean? And sometimes we as fans just want to see other fights, right? But in this case here, Jai got paid a lot of money to fight a voluntary guy that's not really that popular, but he's getting paid a lot to be on this card. And, they're promoting the card as being the greatest card ever. I think you can make an argument based on the names that's on the card as far as the names and the status of the fighters, but the matchups itself are not the best matchups. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of other cards that had better matchups, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But anyway, Jai wants to be on this card. Anybody should want to be on this card because you're going to get the exposure. He just got a lot of exposure beating Jordan Thompson in British soil recently, and they were really pushing Thompson to be like this next big guy, really, really tall cruiserweight. He really just didn't have the skills. All right. That was an easy fight to predict. But Jai is vacating the title, and I think he should. And the reason why I have an issue with it is because there's been a lot of pullouts since he's won this title, since he's beaten Breedis. Recently, Reactpour, Masternick, who just lost to Bill Smith. A lot of these guys been pulling out, and I believe that I should have checked before. I believe Breedis at one point did pull out at one point. But because of the recent pullouts, Breedis had recently became the mandatory for the IBF. And Jai wanted to take this opportunity to fight Zorro on his card. And I don't really think it's about the opponent. I think it's just he wants to be on the card. It's a showcase fight, and he wants to be on this card. So he's vacating the title. I heard his interviews. He's very disappointed. He sounds very disgruntled with just boxing in general. He feels like he's being ducked. He feels like he's being avoided. He wants to fight the best. And I get him. I understand. I personally think he's the best. And I personally think that other fighters are going to go over after the other champions. You know what I mean? I don't think people are going to be standing in line to face him. So, like I say, with him and a lot of other fighters that are being avoided or were avoided at some point in their career, you just got to stay active. You're on the zone. You're with Matchroom. Just stay active. He has, I guess he has some sort of deal where he's going to fight on the next card on Saudi Arabia as well. I don't know who's the opponent going to be, but stay active. Keep putting pressure on the other top fighters in the division. I personally believe that they're going to have to pay his opponents to face him, because these other fighters can unify and not have to deal with him. And now, I believe now that he's vacated the title, yes, he's getting paid more, but now there's even more of a reason not to fight him because you're not even defending a title at this point. All right, so it's going to be tough for him. But it is what it is. It is part of the game, and you just got to do what you have to do. Get that rematch in. I think the rematch with Breedis is off now, and Breedis is going to have to fight Gilberto Ramirez for that IBF vacated IPF strap. And hopefully, maybe in a couple fights from now, maybe some point next year, he could fight the winner of that fight. But the winner of that fight may not want to fight him. I think Breedis would fight him again. I'm not sure if Gilberto Ramirez would fight him, but we just gotta wait and see. All right, but I just wanted to start out with that. He will be fighting this weekend, but it's not gonna be for the IBF strap. It's not gonna be on the line for this weekend's fight. Now, as far as the other fights, let me pull up this card. Phenomenal card, and I will be here Saturday. So make sure you subscribe again. I'll be here all day Saturday. Phenomenal card. As far as the level of fighters that's on this card, a lot of, top, heavyweights and contenders is on this card. Prospects too. You got a lot of names here, but the matchups itself are not that great. Let's go down the list. You got Frank Sanchez against Junior Fa. I think that is a clear win for Frank Sanchez. It could be a boring fight because one thing about Junior Fa is that he doesn't really engage like that when he's not fighting top opposition. And the thing about Frank Sanchez is he's better when he's fighting on his back foot, when he's fighting dangerous opponents. I noticed that when he's coming forward, he sucks. All right, now let me not say sucks, but he gets hit a lot, and I think even his last fight, he caught a shot coming in. I think when he's coming forward, he's not that good. All right, defensively, he's not that good. But when he's fighting on his back foot or when he's using a lot of lateral movement, he's much better. All right, I think he's a better fighter when he's setting trap and he's looking to counter and control distance. Once he's coming forward, I think that's where he leaves himself open to get hit. I think when he's looking for the knockout, he's forcing the knockout. He doesn't fight that smart. His boxing IQ drops when he's coming forward. So this could be a poor matchup. This could be something like Joseph Parker against Junior Fa. So this matchup itself, Frank is good. I like him. I think he's one of the most dangerous opponents simply because of his back foot game. But I just think that Junior Fa not going to really engage. Frank is going to try to force the action, and he might leave himself exposed, or he might get the job done. We'll see. But I think Frank is going to be looking for a knockout here. I'm not really giving Junior Fa much of a chance of winning this fight. It is the heavyweights, and he does have a puncher's chance still, but I still think that Frank is probably going to stop him at some point, or at least go for it. You got Arslanbek Makhmudov against Ajit Kabayel. This is actually one of the better fights that's on the card. Kabayel is arguably the best fighter that Makhmudov is going to face up to this point. You can argue that Carlos Takam is, but Kabayel is younger, he's fresher, and I think, he does. I haven't watched him fight in a while, but I think he is a good boxer, and he's a pretty good counter puncher, and he can fight. If he fights a smart fight, he can make Arslanbek look pretty clumsy in there. I don't know if he's going to win because Arslanbek is really big, strong, and powerful, but Arslanbek is just a brawler to me. He's not really good of a boxer to me. He's just coming straight forward, straight in, and he's throwing wild punches, and he's looking just brawl. You know what I mean? There's not much science to his game. So this is actually a pretty competitive fight. As far as the matchups, I think this is a pretty competitive one. All right? One of the closest matchups on this card. Filip Hrgovic against Mark Demori. Not a great matchup. I mean, Mark Demori has a lot of knockouts. Just not good of a boxer. Again, I think he gets knocked out by Filip Hrgovic. Filip is a puncher and a boxer. I think he's going to destroy this guy. I think, again, this is probably one of the most wide-sided fights here on this card, if not the most, number one. Mark Demori, again, knockouts, but as far as a challenge, no. All right, I think this is a gap between these two. Again, I already talked about Jai Opetaia against Elizoro. I haven't watched enough of Elizoro to tell you. All right, I think I did. I did look him up. I think I might have seen him fight before on an undercard somewhere. But from what I saw, I didn't think he was someone that would give Jai too much issues. You know what I mean? So I'm expecting Jai to win. But I can't give you a proper assessment of this fight. Again, I think Jai is just looking to be on the card and showcase his talent and get some more exposure is what he needs, because the cruiserweight division, especially in America, is just never, it hasn't been popular for many, many years. It just hasn't. No one has cared because it's more of an international division. A lot of Europeans over the years took over this division. You know what I mean? And I think no one cared for this division for a long, long time. All right. So, yeah, I think Jai needs as much exposure as possible. I mean, he's very, very good. He just needs more buzz. And I think being on his card is going to create that. And I think he needs to show out and dominate again like he did against Jordan Thompson. Daniel Dubois against Gerald Miller is probably the most difficult fight to call on this card, to be honest. I mean, at least for me. I think this is the most difficult fight to call. You got Daniel Dubois, who is a puncher, a decent boxer, but a puncher. I think he's pretty one-dimensional, but he's added some firepower, some weapons to his game. It's just hard to call because he's lost twice by stoppage. He's taken knees and didn't get back up. People call him a quitter. And it's a pick 'em fight. It's a 50-50 fight for me because I think if Daniel Dubois wins, he has to stop this guy. He has to stop this guy within 4 or 5 rounds. Once Gerald Miller gets the momentum going, his volume is crazy. His size and his volume is just going to be too much. So I don't think Gerald is the biggest puncher. He's more about volume. And I think he, 1 out of every 5 punches, he's really sitting down on. I think a lot of the other punches he's giving you, he's just flurrying. He's giving you angles, and he's just going to overwork you when you're fading. The thing about Daniel is that Gerald Miller is going to be a little bit more defensive. He's going to be trying to not take too many clean punches from Dubois early. Daniel is probably going to try to blitz him, and I think he's probably going to go for the stoppage early. But it's a gamble because you outthrow yourself, and then now this guy, you got this 300-plus pound guy walking you down. You know what I mean? So, dangerous fight for both. Still waiting to see what Gerald Miller can do at a top level at heavyweight without, the juice being clean. But I think this is the most even fight on this entire card, in my opinion. It's the hardest to call. I still haven't decided yet, but I will do some sort of a breakdown before week's end. And then you have Dimitri Bivol against Lyndon Arthur. I'm expecting Bivol to win. I mean, Lyndon is a good boxer. He has a good jab. Bivol hasn't had many stoppages, but I think Bivol should choose this fight as a statement. I think he should make a statement by going for a stoppage. I think he can outbox Lyndon Arthur. Lyndon Arthur is pretty good at controlling distance. He has a good jab. We've seen what he did against Anthony Yarde in their first fight. But I don't know. I haven't followed up with this. Maybe someone in the comments could, but he looked to be injured at the press conference. I know he was walking with a limp. I don't know what that means. I don't know if he's trained at his best for this. I know a lot of these guys got a last-minute call to be here for this event. But I think Dimitri has fought guys at this level for quite some time now and better. And I think he should try to push for a stoppage. Arthur's been stopped before. I think he's been hurt before. I think he should try to make a statement and get a stoppage. And hopefully for Bevo, it's only one fight I asked for, and that's against Better BF. At this point, I don't want to see anything else from Bevo. I don't even want to see a Canelo rematch. There's nothing for Bevo for me except for Better BF. All right, but I'm expecting Bevo to win at least by a wide decision or by stoppage. All right. And then we got Deontay Wilder against Joseph Parker, which is one of the most even fights as well on this card. Probably second to Daniel Dubois Miller, and also Arsenbeck and Caballero is pretty even. But it's up there. It's probably the number 2 most competitive matchup going into the fight. Simply because Parker he's definitely Wilder's top 3 opponent for Wilder. Now, if he's at number 2 or 3, that's debatable for you. Whether you want to put Luis Ortiz ahead of Parker or Parker ahead of Luis Ortiz. I talk more about the matchup itself and the styles, being that Parker never fought Ortiz before. I think style-wise, I think Ortiz was a little bit more dangerous, but I think as far as accomplishments and resume, I would go with Parker over Luis Ortiz. All right. But Luis Ortiz is Wilder's biggest win. And I think if Wilder was to win this fight, this might be his biggest win, arguably because Joseph Parker is a former champion. He's been in there with Andy Ruiz. He has a win over him and a long list of fighters. I'm trying to figure out where I think of Parker. Like, there's a part of me that feels like Parker is more experienced and he's more seasoned. But there's a part of me also that feels like he hasn't improved that much over the years. Going back to Andy Ruiz fight, and I would have to go back to that, or maybe even a Carlos Takam fight, because that was his first real test. I followed Parker for this year. I was probably the first American channel that was following Joseph Parker earlier than anyone. As far as American boxing channels, I can confirm that I was like definitely making content on him first. And I've been watching him his whole pro career, and maybe 3 fights in. And I could be honest, I haven't seen much elevation in his game. I've seen the ups and downs. I've seen fights where I always felt he could do more. I think that he lacks the killer instinct. I think Parker could be so much better if mentally he wanted to destroy his opponents. And I seen that in the last fight. I'm glad he got Keane out of there, because the guy was just not that good of a boxer. He was a brawler, and I thought Parker had the skills, even though it was like Mark Demori, against Philip Hrgovic. That is one of the matchups for this fight. It's like Simon Keane had power. He had a lot of knockouts, but he just didn't have the skills. And, the Derek Chisora fight, the Dillian White fights like those is where, like, you want Parker to go in there where he wants to destroy a fighter. I think he tries a little bit too much to be like this slick guy, and he's just too passive. Like, he needs to go back to, or not even go back, because he was only doing it towards the journeyman he was facing early in his career when he was getting the stoppages. But once he elevated in opposition, I just didn't see the killer instinct. And it was only moments of it. And I think he should have stopped Derek Chisora. I think he should have fought White more aggressively earlier in the fight. And I don't even think it's the skills. Obviously he has the experience, but it's more about wanting to destroy your opponent, and I think that's what his biggest flaw is. He's never going to be that good of a defender, but he's always had a solid chin. He's never going to have the best gas. I don't think he's nearly as fast as what he was before. I mean, at one point, him and Andy Ruiz were clearly the two quickest punchers in the heavyweight division. You know, even earlier in their career, they were clearly the two quickest as far as hand speed. I don't think he's nearly as fast as that no more. You know, he's gained the weight. He's more durable now. You know, I think that's what he's focused on. But he is in great shape. Deontay Wilder, he's fought one round in the last 2 years, and I guess I have questions on where he's at mentally and if he's as durable as he was before. This is a dangerous fight for him, but I would have to pick him because of the right hand, and I don't think it's going to be that hard to land it against Joseph. I think a certain amount of them will hurt Joseph at some point. But Joseph, if he decides to really bring the fight to Wilder and not be so friendly, I think he can win. I think Joseph Parker can win. I wouldn't say this is 50-50. I'm thinking more like 60-40. But I'm still leaning towards Wilder, I'm sorry. I know Parker has been more active. I know Wilder is, 2 years ago he was stopped twice, a couple years back by Fury. But he took a lot of punishment in those fights. I don't think Joseph can do what Fury did. Fury, bigger puncher, bigger man, more aggressive in those fights. But Parker can and being that he's close to Fury, if Parker can somewhat bring that intensity while being durable enough to take a certain amount of right hands from Wilder, he has a good chance. He does have a chance, especially because Wilder is rusty. He's getting up there in age. If he can catch him on the right night, maybe he can win, Again, he's one of the best fighters that Wilder's faced. Luis Ortiz was still, even though Luis Ortiz lost to Wilder twice, Luis Ortiz was able to badly hurt Wilder in the first fight, and he was also able to win every round against Wilder in their rematch before he got knocked out. So it's not about, if this fight can go the distance, Joseph Parker has a great chance of winning the fight. But again, Wilder in his right hand, I don't know how that's going to work out, So I'm leaning towards Wilder, but I will do a prediction. I didn't do any film study yet. I have done a little bit of film study for Anthony Joshua and Otto Wallin, which I'm ready to do a breakdown for that, and I will. So be on the lookout because that'll be the first breakdown I do. I didn't have to do much film study because I already knew. I had been watching both recently, randomly. I know Wallin recently had a fight, and I think I did film study on him recently, so I know him well. I've seen him down in Brazil fight a couple times. I've seen his fight with Fury a couple times, so I'm very familiar with Otto Wallin. Joshua should win this. I don't feel like this is as dangerous as Wilder's fight with Parker. I think Wallin is somewhere in the middle of Charles Martin and Alexander Usyk. And I'm only comparing them because those are the southpaws that Joshua fought. I've said this before. When you have to prepare and you go 12 rounds twice with Alexander Usyk back to back, and you have to prepare for that kind of fight, I think it eases things when you're fighting someone like Otto Wallin. It's like you're going to be fighting Usyk in slow motion. It's like Usyk does everything better than Wallin. But I think Wallin, IQ-wise, overall is better than Charles Martin. Charles just could not get out of the way with the straight right hand. Anthony Joshua, undefeated version of him was a beast. He was more of a monster, and he was his timing. Again, his killer instinct was on a different level at that point. I think the skills might have developed more, but the killer instinct hasn't really been there. We've shown some signs of it, but I think when he fought, and let me pull it up real quick because I don't want to forget anybody's name. So I think the only issue with Joshua is not his abilities. I think it's I think his second guessing himself in the ring, and just not just being sure of himself, you know. I think mentally losing to Andy Ruiz has changed him. I think he's still top tier fighter, but I think there was a time where he was better, mentally stronger. And I think we've seen some of it in the Kubrat Pulev fight where he's being a little bit aggressive. I liked him in the Usyk rematch, even though he lost. I liked him in that fight. I liked him in that fight. I liked Robert Garcia. Like I liked what he was doing in the fight with Usyk. It just wasn't enough. But I think Otto Wallin is somewhere in the middle between those two fighters, those two southpaws. And listen, he's smaller than AJ. I think whether he's coming forward or going backwards, I think AJ is just overall a better boxer. He's stronger. He's bigger. And I think even Wallin fades too. You know what I mean? So I just think AJ should win this fight. It's not that I'm sleeping on Wallin because he is a good boxer, and I think he can give AJ some problems and he's going to get off. He's going to land his jabs. Like he has a pretty good jab. He has good timing, you know what I mean? He's good at controlling distance, but I think AJ is going to be coming forward. And I know Wallin did good against Tyson Fury because you got to look at the fight. Tyson Fury was a lot less aggressive in that fight and the previous fights. It wasn't until after the Wallin fight where Fury started really imposing his size on his opponents, and sitting down on the punches. Well, Fury, if you watch that fight, especially in the earlier rounds, he's more fighting him in the back foot, just pot shotting more and it's looking to set traps, not just using his jab 90% of the time. It was a lot less aggressive version of Tyson Fury. There was a time in the fight where he did start to come forward, but I think Fury against Wilder and White and Chisora in the those were more aggressive Fury fights. So I think even though Wallin gets a lot of praise for that performance, it's that version of Fury he did well, and that version is still very good and boxes very well, but that's not AJ, AJ is going to be bringing what Dominic Brazil brought, but a lot better, a lot more, Joshua has a more variety of punches. He's a better counter puncher. He's fast. I just think that Joshua should win, even if he doesn't stop Wallin. And I think Joshua should try to stop him. And I know he stopped Helenius a little late, but Helenius was on PEDs. He was juiced up. So not making any excuses, but I wouldn't expect Joshua to knock out Helenius faster than Wilder did. Wilder is just one punch, boom, it's over. Joshua has power, but not like that. You know what I mean? It's like Dominic Brazil as well. Joshua destroyed Brazil, but round by round destroyed him until he stopped it. Where Wilder just knocked him out in one round. You know what I mean? It's just Wilder's different. So I think that Alto Wilder could give AJ some issues. It could be competitive, but this is AJ. Like AJ should be able to deal with this fight without too much of an issue. Like it shouldn't be a point where the fight is he could almost lose a fight. I think AJ should win the fight. Alto Wilder is not even that big of a puncher. Again, I think he could bring some intensity there, but I expect AJ to be coming forward. I expect, even if Wallin tried to come forward towards AJ, I don't even think that's a good idea because AJ can fight on the back foot and catch him coming in. So I don't think that Wallin is going to apply that pressure on AJ. I think AJ is going to be coming forward, and Wallin is going to be on the back foot trying to use the ring, but he is not Usyk. When you see the Usyk fight, Usyk is doing so much to throw off AJ, and I don't think that Wallin is capable of that. You know, he's like, again, he's a slower version of Usyk. He can do some of those things, but Usyk is bouncing around. He's dipping low. He's fainting. He's doing all this stuff with his lead hand. You know, he's changing directions. He's, fainting. Did I say that already? He's doing a lot to throw off AJ's timing. AJ is just following him, trying to do his own thing, but he can't keep up with Usyk's time. He can't time it right. But now Otto Wallin is going to seem, even if Otto Wallin is moving, he's going to appear to be so much more stationary than Usyk. And at some point, I think AJ is going to get to him, land some big shots, and hurt and bust up Wallin. Even if he doesn't stop him, I think he's going to beat him up. All right. I'll do a breakdown video, an actual breakdown. So I'm sure everyone's not going to see this, but great card again. Some good fights. I mean, listen, and I don't want to take anything away from that fight. It's still a good fight. It's just that, I think Joshua is more than capable of beating Wallin. He's not a top 3 opponent for him. AJ has about 6 or 7 guys that are at least on a level of Wallin, if not better, on his resume. And I know styles make fights, but again, he has at least 6 or 7 guys where you can make an argument they're better than Otto Wallin or more dangerous. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's my preview to this fight. Again, I'll be here this Saturday all day. So come through. This is going to be the longest commentary video ever. But I'll be here Saturday. We're going to cover all of these fights. Again, subscribe to the channel. Hit the thumbs up. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.